Well, hello everybody. I know it's been a minute since I've been here out on YouTube. It's just been big deadline energy time. I'm finally come up for air. It's also impacted my reading as I'm sort of now just kind of lurching my way through the 100 book challenge, but we have been reading all along and there's some more books in the backlog. I don't want to do another catch-up video. I'm just going to try to get videos done. This is an exciting one. This is DiFATE'S Catalog of Science Fiction Hardware by Vincent DiFate, the man, one of the great science fiction illustrators of all time. Oh, we're going to look at a lot of really super cool pictures today. Let's go. Okay, so first of all, the book itself, this was published by Workman Press in 1980. This copy that I found here is actually the first printing. I'm going to be very careful with this because Workman, not necessarily known for the quality of the binding. The printing is good. Everything about the book is fantastic, except or maybe this was just stored someplace where it got really hot, which can work at the glue on a perfect bound book like this. When I first started to read this, I opened it up and it just immediately started to fall apart. And I think you can kind of hear it still creaking if the fan noise in the background isn't drowning out everything. This forced me, as I was reading it, to glue it several times and set it aside and come back to it and set it aside and come back to it, just trying to keep it, just in sort of in one piece. I did not do the best job of gluing that. As you can see, there's sort of, uneven, signatures sort of thrown in there. Maybe someday actually go ahead and very carefully get the cover off and just rebind the whole thing. A project for a future time. But anyway, gorgeous stuff, beautiful. Normally I would flip through these books, like I did with the, that sort of Terran Trade Authority book that we just looked at. But because this is so iffy in terms of the binding, I'm not going to be able to do that. But I'm going to try to just sort of, because I don't have images to put up next to me, with some of the schematics. One of the things that's cool about this book is that he took his illustrations that he had done for various book and magazine covers. You'll see some from Analog magazine for sure. And, sort of did the schematics and said, kind of gave you a sense of how these things are going to work in real life. I wish I could show you all of those, but again, the book is just going to fall apart. So let's get into who is this guy, Vincent DiFate? Educated at the Phoenix School of Design in New York with a master's in illustration from Syracuse, right? So not just kind of a guy who thought, ooh, it would be fun to paint spaceships, right? But, a educated and accomplished artist in his own right. Won all the awards, won the Hugo in 1979, the Chesley Award in 98, the Locus Award also in 98, among other accolades, yeah. And so you'll see in these images that I'll put up on the screen, either next to me or over me completely. This book includes just some of the great Vincent DiFate images, including this one from, obviously, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This one, I had this book and read this, Jandar of Callisto by Lynn Carter. Just that cool kind of ornithopter thing. His space stations were like great circular disc-shaped things, or the kind of torus stuff. And everything was just kind of rockets, right? This was late 60s, through the 70s, there was a real sense that he was trying to sort of see the future and what is it really going to look like out there in space, but then in a really interesting and painterly way, right? Like, it's not just dead black with, a scattering of stars. There's stuff going on around the space. There's a sense of kind of realism to what he's doing, like you see in this air car, which was the cover to this analog issue of Analog magazine. So as a kid, I would have subscriptions to Analog magazine. They would kind of lapse, and then I'd subscribe again, lapse, and I'd subscribe. But throughout this period of time, I was reading Analog magazine. And this is why, one of the reasons that Vincent DiFate really just sort of infected me as a science fiction fan. He was all over that, and just all over the book covers of that time period. Throughout the late 60s, early 70s, all that great vintage stuff. But here you're going to see, like, just rockets and then a sense of not so much realism, but a kind of plausibility about things like, is that Saturn behind there maybe, or just a ringed planet in general? Love this one. And this is what I mean by there's a sense of this is realistic, this hardware could actually maybe fly, right? This is sort of within the realms of engineering, but there's still a painterly sense of it. It's not an attempt to sort of do this photorealistic thing. It's an attempt to actually create a work of art that references science fiction. This one, fantastic, coming over these frozen mountains. You can see the book cover here. I mean, he's just kind of literally all over the place in this time period of science fiction publishing, which is a great period. And I'm sorry if I'm sometimes not making eye contact with you. Hi, I see you. But I'm going to sort of looking at my screen here to make sure I'm talking about the right thing. And it wasn't all spaceships, although the book was about science fiction hardware. Here's a piece of science fiction hardware that's not a rocket, but a time machine. I love this. This could have been a painting for like the Ray Bradbury story, Sound of Thunder. It was indeed Paradox Lost. You know by now that I'm a big fan of the futuristic sci-fi cityscape, and DiFate does not disappoint. And another thing that he did really, really well, which if you saw my video, and of course you saw my video because you've seen all my videos on the Chris Foss book, where there's a real sort of sparsity of humans in there. It's the hardware itself and, the spaceship, the building, the giant, tank or whatever. And there's very rarely a human in there. DiFate wasn't afraid of painting people, including like this groovy astronaut guy, which was the cover of a Robert Heinlein book, The Green Hills of Earth. And then, of course, back to the space stations, just fantastic. But again, there's a human element to there. There's a little astronaut in, sort of in the foreground. These are things that are being used by people. People are going to space. That was the cover for the Analog Annual, which again, no surprise. He was just a favorite of Analog magazine during this entire era. Another great space station. You can see, just looking at a few of these pictures, there is sort of a style to his rocket ships, his space stations, his everything, that similar to Chris Foss, right, where his were a little bit more kind of strangely amorphous, brightly colored. DiFate's were more, and again, I'm going to use that R word, so be careful here, realistic in terms of what did actual rockets look like, what were the sort of things on the NASA conceptual drawing board, what might they look like, and it might look exactly like this kind of thing. Feeling kind of old tech, yeah, but entirely plausible. Oh, I hate using the word realistic, but realistic looking spaceships that are still very painterly, pardon me. And again, right, Analog magazine, there he is on the cover. Again, with there's a human face to what he's doing here. Yeah, like the cover of this edition of Double Star by Robert Heinlein, sort of considered one of Heinlein's better books. I have a copy of it in the giant stacks of random things, but we'll get to it at random at some point. Love this guy. This was actually from an edition of Starship Troopers, which I failed to find the full cover for, but we believe that this is Starship Troopers. And again, he's covering huge swaths of territory, you know, that sort of, you know, current 1970s science fiction novels and magazines, and then, of course, going to the classics like The War of the Worlds. This one he did for that J.G. Ballard novel. I was not a huge fan of the book, but who cares? Love this image. The image is actually really compelling. And then again, space stations that feel like a thing, right? Looking at this, it really, the shape really feels like sort of the lunar module from the Apollo period, right? But it's a space station, and it's just sort of, it looks like a place that people would actually build. And then they would attach, oh, we need an antenna here. Oh, we are installing the new, you know, communication system, so we're going to throw an antenna on. And it looks like it was actually built by people. It was the cover of the Triune Man, yeah. These were real covers. These were books that were just out there. And again, for someone from my generation, this is what science fiction looked like. Love this painting. Again, another one where you see DeFate bringing hardware and wetware together. This was for the cover of the Best of Philip K. Dick in these great, like, super collectible Del Rey collections that are out there. And again, right, put a person into the technology, and now we have humanized science fiction. Now we know that there's, like, I can be in this space station or this ship or where this laboratory or wherever this guy is. This is the future Phil up on the space station. Okay, it didn't come to pass, but that's a whole other gripe, right? And then this great android here that is really the melding of human and machine. I'm a Ron Goulart fan, you know that about me. I've outed myself about that before in the past. So, I mean, this is great. This is it, right? Vincent DeFate, just literally one of the greatest of all time. Absolutely love everything that he's done. And honestly, for someone of my generation, is Vincent DeFate's artwork was what the future looked like. Yeah. It was painterly and expressive angle on this hardware and the wetware to come. Dynamite stuff. This is the book. DeFate's Catalog of Science Fiction, hardware by the man himself. 1980 Workman Press. Go find one of these. Hopefully it will not have been completely unglued or have little boo-boos on it like mine, but find it, get it, be careful opening it up, read it, love it, fantastic. This was episode 40 of the ongoing 100 book challenge. Yikes, right? Slow going, really hit kind of a lull here in my own reading because of all the work that was coming in and just deadlines on top of deadlines for really the last couple of months of 2025 and the first of 2026. But that's a good thing, right? Freelancer busy equals freelancer with a roof over his head. Anyway, this has been 40. This is how you subscribe. This is the algorithmically chosen next video to watch. This has been number 40. I will be back with 41 as soon as I possibly can. I'm going to get caught up, and I'm going to get these videos coming out more frequently, and I'm going to be finishing books more frequently. This I swear on the old gods and the new.